The Wayward Realms is an upcoming medieval fantasy first-of-its-kind grand RPG. And this sub-genre term, grand RPG, is not something that I came up with here. This is what the devs refer to their game as.
The Wayward Realms is a first-of-its-kind grand RPG where your decisions dictate your story and determine which path you take in this massive open world.
Stick around, as later on in this video I will be interviewing Ted Peterson himself, chapter markers below. I have covered this game's development a few times in the past on the channel, but with the recent announcement of an upcoming Kickstarter campaign, which is said to lead to an early access alpha period where players get access to the prologue chapter of the game, I figured now is a great time to do another video. Chapter markers below. Do note that all of the video footage that you're seeing today is pre-alpha footage. So a quick summary of what this game is before we talk to Ted. The Wayward Realms is being developed by Once Lost Games, a studio based out of North Carolina that's headed by a few of the OG devs from some of the earlier Elder Scrolls games. It is said to be the spiritual successor to the Elder Scrolls Daggerfall from way back in '96. Daggerfall was known for its insanely large world map, which is of course only possible with the heavy use of procedural generation technology, its lore, and also its immense amount of player freedom. Don't want to focus on the main quest and story? Sure, head off in any direction that you want and roleplay as a bandit or perhaps a Knight Sentinel. This seems to be a similar theme for the Wayward Realms. Now, of course, a large map, especially an insanely large map, does not equate to a game being good. It's the content within, but this is one of this game's very unique features. We are told to expect realistically scaled cities and towns, and do note that cities can grow, deteriorate, and even be entirely destroyed by war. There's going to be thousands of labyrinthian dungeons to explore and a virtual game master to tailor the experience to your particular character's playstyle. This game is all about player choice and doing what you want to do in the world, reacting to that. And the game's 4 core pillars are restoring scope, choice, consequences, and also role-playing to RPGs. No two players are going to ever have the same exact experience. You can be a player who lives life in the shadows of the streets, role-playing as a thief, or perhaps work your way into more of an aristocratic life and not concern yourself with the matters of those filthy peasants. Even more along the lines of freedom of choice, you're not going to be choosing pre-baked classes in this game. Rather, you'll play as a class of your own design and making, with custom skills, spells, potions, and enchantments. So yes, you can build yourself into that tanky, heavy armor warrior, but you can also create classes that fall way out of the traditional RPG class boxes. Once Lost is returning to classic CRPG design philosophies for this game, something I personally love to hear. So I'd expect plenty of deep and complex systems. There's even going to be spellcrafting, and I'm sure many of you may miss systems like that from games such as Oblivion. The Wayward Realms will of course feature a ton of quests, many of which will be non-linear in nature, a combat system, and do note that although the first-person perspective is the primary focus, Once Lost has said that they want to provide a third-person option as well. There will be magic, deep dark dungeons, alchemy, a wide variety of different weapon types, deep character progression that doesn't force you into those specific class roles, the ability to purchase homes, there's going to be ships, fishing, climbing, horseback riding, a reputation and law system, and the list goes on. Quickly touching back on player progression, Once Lost is going with a system where there is no player level, rather your skills will level up individually through their use, which yeah, is a bit more of a hardcore old school mechanic, as you don't see as many RPGs using systems like that these days. As far as attributes go, as of now, expect willpower, endurance, dexterity, perception, intelligence, charisma, speed, and strength. There's also, of course, going to be different races to choose from, and each race will have bonuses to their attributes based on their physiology and also characteristics. The playable races that were confirmed a few years ago were orcs, humans, elves, cambions, dwarves, and goblins. There's certainly going to be more than that. On the Wayward Realms fandom wiki, you can see a larger playable race list, but I've not confirmed all of these myself. In this game, you'll start off as an adventurer, and you'll be allying yourself with one of the many feuding factions, which is said to lead to witnessing major world events that will shape the very history of the archipelago. The archipelago is a land that is grounded, but also fantastical, and one thing I love to see Once Lost focusing on is, of course, the world lore. On their socials and on some of their videos, you can find all sorts of lore drops on different deities, information on creatures such as why goblins, or why some goblins may wear fake beards, different noble houses and orc clans, the factions, ethnicities, and groups of peoples such as the Jungaren horsemen, and the list goes on. As we get closer to early access or official release, I'll probably dive much deeper into the lore that we have, but lore discovery does seem like it can also be a major part of a player's experience for those who are into that. You know, collecting books, finding ancient runestones, item descriptions, etc. I'll do much deeper dives into this game in the future, but for now, let's have a chat with Ted. Hello, Ted. Thank you very much for coming onto the channel. If you don't mind just giving us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and your history in game development.
Well, sure. So my name is Ted Peterson. I've been making games since the early 90s. My first job was at Bethesda Softworks, where I worked on a bunch of games. Back in the day, we cranked them out real fast. So probably half of my games that I've done, no, that's not true. Probably like a third of the games I've done have been from Bethesda, just because we made them real quick and back in the day.
Uh-huh.
And so I was there through 96 and came out to the West Coast and worked on a couple game companies, EA, Disney, Activision, smaller game companies, and made a bunch of games out there. And then came back out here on the East Coast and sort of fell in with some old partners in crime like Julian LaFay, and started talking about doing a spiritual successor to our game Daggerfall, and that's kind of where we are right now.
So you and Julian, from what I've seen online, like the big part of your guys' reputation is Elder Scrolls Arena and also Daggerfall. Did you work on Morrowind by any chance?
I did. I worked on Morrowind and Oblivion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I worked on those as a contractor, so I was not an employee at the time. But I was kind of a consultant, and I wrote a bunch of books for them.
And what is your role now at Once Lost Games?
Once Lost Games, I guess there's a difference between my role at Once Lost Games versus my role on Wayward Realms. So, Once Lost Games, I'm the CEO, and at for Wayward Realms, I think my title is creative director.
Okay.
So design and writing and someone who comes in and says, I don't like that hat.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Is there a more modern day RPG that kind of inspired you to, really come back at it, and anything in modern times that you really look up to, or?
No. Well, I mean, I'll be honest. It's part of the reason why I started doing this is because there really hasn't been that. I kind of felt like RPGs are moving in a direction that I think is less interesting. And I really like to, I on the first two Elder Scrolls games, I thought we were moving in a certain direction, and as much as I enjoyed the later Elder Scrolls games and a lot of other recent RPGs, and there are certainly elements of it where, like, I recognize obviously graphical, improvements, control improvements, different other aspects that individual pieces, like, we're going to incorporate into it. Kind of an overall philosophy and game design is something that I think would benefit from a little trajectory adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. A lot of people, myself and a lot of people on my channel, like, overall RPGs over the past maybe 10 years or so are kind of seem to be going more into like the streamlined nature, appeal to as many people as possible. And it kind of takes away a lot of the things that made RPGs special in the 90s and the early 2000s. So totally understand that. Now, for those who have not played Daggerfall before, can you explain why you guys are calling the Wayward Realms a spiritual successor to this game?
Well, I guess a couple of reasons. If you haven't played Daggerfall before, it's a weird game. And I say that with I've always said that weird is good. So, like, that's not me dissing on myself. But it's a game where it's very nonlinear. It's massively huge. Probably if you list a thing of like biggest sandbox worlds created, it's up there. I think it used to be number one, but different things have changed, and it may not be number one anymore. Um, like really fun character creation, which to this day you can find YouTube channels where people are trying to play Daggerfall in different ways and saying, I'm going to be a guy who is uh, only able to do social skills and no magic, no weaponry, and like really have a good time doing it. So
Really role play off of that.
well, that's the thing. It's a called a role playing game for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be a thing where you create a character that you imagine would be interesting to play, and even if you say maybe I'm only going to play this for a couple hours just to see how the game reacts to that. That's a worthy thing that we want to make sure people can do.
So I have a very long time patron of the channel named Volk Nasty, and he wanted me to ask you a question. How is this game a first of its kind grand RPG? I see you guys using that kind of subgenre term before, and like, what's your twist on the, I guess you could say, tried and true RPG formula that's been around for so long?
Yeah, but I think the grand RPG thing came from discussions where we're talking about doing a lot of things bigger. Okay. So, grand doesn't mean anything, outside of marketing, but it is to us a thing where we can never think small. We always have to, think, okay, what's the craziest thing a player might want to do?
Okay.
Where, like, and again, the landscape that we've done for Wayward Realms is larger than the one we did for Daggerfall, because we're like, no reason to go backwards. So
I think I saw a player on YouTube walked across the map in Daggerfall, and it took him, I think, 69 hours. It's like a time lapse video. You ever seen that video before?
I have not, but I'm surprised it was only that.
Yeah, maybe he used some console commands or something like that, but that's still pretty crazy though.
Well, yeah, I guess 69 hours if you don't get killed along the way, or have random encounters and stuff like that. So
that kind of ties into obviously procedural generation is being used. You can't handcraft a world that's big or that's that right. big. But there's a lot of concerns around procedural generation at times, and it can sometimes make games feel a bit soulless. So what are you guys doing to kind of overcome that, especially with your map size, and how much of this game is handcrafted, or what is handcrafted?
Well, no, I think it's a fair point, but what was weird is, that was the reason why Daggerfall was so big, was that we, did a lot of proc gen, and we were guilty of a lot of the things that, people are worried about with, the world having a sameness. Mm-hmm. So I will say there's a lot of things that we're doing when it comes to creating, everything from the landscape to the villages, that we are making that part of the algorithm, that we're saying, like, if this has been done before, if something like this has been done before, we're not going to do it again. And things need to make sense, that if it's a town set on a river, then it could be a pirate's village, it could be a trader's center, like we try to come up with themes around the different places, just kind of like using the mind of a person who would handcraft a village, for example.
Okay.
That you are thinking in terms of theme and what makes sense for this location, and that same goes for, like, buildings and dungeons and all that good stuff.
So how in your experience, how far has procedural generation technology come since, like, the Daggerfall days? I think you guys are now using Unreal Engine 5 for this game.
Yeah, so a lot of it is also based on new technology. So we are on 5, and we're in good contact with the people at Unreal to know what the latest things are that are coming out, and kind of be ahead of the curve. And we've suggested some things that they are adopting. So it's a two-way conversation. But there are things where you do see even though people don't necessarily have a game with the same ambition and size that we're talking about, that those technologies are already underway. So
okay. All right, now kind of transitioning into content in the game itself. So is there going to be a main story that can be focused on in this game? And will that story vary from player to player? How's that going to work?
So I think that yes and no. So it is not. We have world events in the game, and there are things that are going to happen whether the player wants them to or not.
Mm-hmm.
The player does have some influence on them. So, I'm trying hard not to do any spoilers.
Okay.
So I
Understand.
can't really give examples, but like there's something that's going to happen that could happen sooner or later, but the player can hustle it along or delay it. But it will happen. And I guess you could probably assume it's a death, because people do die, whether you help them along or you try to save them. That does happen. So, sorry.
Touching on that a little bit is, let's say you killed like a mayor of a town. Is death permanent in this game? Is that mayor gone or?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so yeah, really choice consequence. That's kind of a big theme. Yeah, I like that a lot. Now, on a similar subject, I did hear you, or not necessarily you, but somebody in one of the Once Lost videos mention a 5-act formula for quests. Could you explain a bit as to what this means?
I didn't know that we had released that. Yeah, this has been a big thing for me. And again, so proc gen is not necessarily just for the world building, but it's also for infinite quests. So one of the things that I think was a big problem with, and again, I'll call myself out, like things like Daggerfall, where you walked up to someone and they happened to be a quest giver, and they said, you know, my sister is a werewolf, and I need you to go to this dungeon and kill her, or rescue her or whatever. But you didn't get any lead up. There's no emotional investment. There's nothing like a handcrafted version of that would obviously be like, oh, there's a bunch of dead bodies that were found in this town, and the bartender's sister disappeared, or things that let you know that this isn't just a randomly generated quest, that it is tied in with actual world events, and it could connect back to that. So the 5-act structure is the Shakespearean structure, where like the first act is a whole lot of setup. So it will be like dead bodies found in the town, or the barmaid sister disappearing. Those could be two different quests, and then all the way up to kind of building action to like the fifth act, which is the resolution, which is beyond. You get 500 gold pieces for doing this. It's because you did this, then your reputation changes. It could influence things where like, now that there's no longer a werewolf in this town, that like changes their connection with other people. It sets up the next play.
Is there an actual end to the game? Is there roll credits, or is this you can live in this world forever? Or
no, there's no end to the game.
Okay, all right, very cool. All right, so
there's no end to the game, but there is a, I guess, end scenario. So there's something that happens towards the end of again, world events that leads into, we're definitely thinking we're going to do a sequel to this, and it's going to open it up to say, all right, this is the next thing that's going to happen, and you're going to need to buy the next game.
Okay, so you're kind of
get yourself involved.
You're kind of getting into like a world stage where you've kind of gotten to where the world is at, and then that might lead into a sequel. Okay, so I did want to touch quickly on the class list system for the game. a lot of people are always very curious about how classes work and stuff like that. I did hear you guys mention that you can kind of build a character the way that you want. How is this going to be represented? Are we going to have like skill trees and you can just go into any of them, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's going to be similar to Daggerfall. So if you played that, then you'll kind of get the overall thing. There's some changes that I probably shouldn't talk too much um, about how you create your own character, but I really liked what we did with Daggerfall specifically, where you could create your own class. So you could say, I'm going to be a book collector class. And that is, all I care about is collecting books. And you're going to, put skills into those areas that help you along that way. But that's how you identify. I just think that, again, to the role playing, you're supposed to do a role playing game, so you should, play the game you want to play.
That's pretty cool. So like what if I wanted to learn magic? Am I starting the game with a base level of magic, or am I going to come across a book that has a spell in it, or how would I learn a spell?
Sure. Well, so a couple of things. There's not going to be the TES Mages Guild on every corner, style thing. That magic we want to be rarer, and I think part of the charm of magic is that it's not everyone in town can fire a fireball.
Mm-hmm.
So it does need to be a thing where it's harder than some other things, but obviously potentially more powerful. So really in all skills, there is a part where the early stages aren't that hard. And as you're getting better, obviously you can be reading different books to learn about your skills. But at some point you're going to have to get a mentor to, bring you to the top level.
Okay. All right. And I think this is a good time where we can transition into non-combat skills. And someone on my Discord server named Shadowblack wanted me to ask you, can we expect plenty of non-combat skills in this game? And if so, are there any rather unique ones, outside of persuasion and lock picking that you could enlighten us on?
Yeah, again, I don't want to give things away that are going to be a spoiler, but a lot of times we spend on, like, when we're talking about quests and ways to get through things, of saying, all right, what if you're like a foppish aristocrat? How can you get through this? And things like, obviously all the thiefy skills are obviously going to be in there, but different aristocratic skills where it comes to playing games and disguise and seduction and things like that are in the works.
Okay. Now, a question that I had myself was, I see a lot of ships in the game's marketing and a lot of water, because obviously this is in the archipelago, or takes place in an archipelago.
We can't get away from that.
Is there going to be any type of water content, or is it mainly just for sale? Okay. All right.
Oh yeah. No, like on top of water, rivers and underwater stuff, all of that.
Are ships going to have like a sophisticated system behind them, or is it just going to be you buy a ship and you just WSD around?
Yeah, no. Like, I think it's going to be both. Like, if you're someone who wants a ship for, just pure transportation, then you can hire a crew and they can handle most of it for you.
Okay.
But if you want to be the guy who just has a little sailboat and you're handling it all yourself, we can do that.
Cool. So you guys did recently announce that you're going to be starting up a Kickstarter. Could you kind of tell us viewers why you think we should consider backing it?
Now I'm on salesman pitch.
You're on salesman pitch.
That's fine. I mean, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe like you think that the RPGs are on a great path and you want to keep going that way and letting the producers who are making those keep on doing those same games. But if you like the idea of kind of stretching out a little bit and making a game, us making a game that lets you kind of play the game the way you want to and create the character you want to, um, and has kind of we call it a virtual game master who will keep it interesting for you, then that's the kind of game we're making. So
what's the goal with the Kickstarter? Are you guys looking to fund, I mean, obviously overall production of the game, but is there not a monetary goal? Like, are you guys looking to expand the studio or?
Well, really the goal of the Kickstarter is to do a prologue chapter. So we have a starter island called Ijar, which is about the size of about the size of Skyrim. And so that's our starter island. Just to say,
that's the
like
prologue.
Yeah, like it like on a map, it's like a couple pixels. So we want to expand it beyond that, but this would be enough to get us started. Let us, we've had a team that's been working on this for a couple of years, and they've been doing a fantastic job, but they deserve to be paid. And we would, want to do this to finish these systems and get to the stage where people can play it, and we can get notes from y'all and say, like, let's do this differently. So not every feature is going to be in the early access build, but the core elements are going to be there, so you can say what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, you're kind of testing out the foundation of the game, but limiting players. It's funny I say limiting, but we have access to a map the size of Skyrim. But I
know, but again, that goes back to my point, is like that we had one of the biggest games in the world, and then chapter by chapter they got smaller.
Well, I really hope that you guys get to that, because obviously not all companies are able to use early access successfully, but like Baldur's Gate 3 with Larian Studios, for example, was a great example of a chapter 1, and us players helped build the foundation of the game. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I met that dude.
You met Sven, the owner?
Yeah, well, we were on I think it was a PC Gamer chat.
Oh, okay. Is that somewhere online? I'll have to try to find. Is it like an interview?
It is, but it was a podcast.
Okay.
So it is somewhere out there, but not to dissuade people from your channel.
Fair enough. And the last question I have is, do you guys have a target? Do you guys have I know it's hard to say stuff like this because you don't want to give promises that you can't uphold, but is there a goal for the year that this early access you would like to be able to have it out by? Is that something you can share, or you don't have to?
I mean, I could say about a year.
Okay. All right.
But like, I'm not going to say like March 18th.
Okay. Fair enough. That sounds good.
We have a goal, and we'll probably miss it, but we'll hit the goal that we actually, broadcast.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ted. I'm looking forward to this game. I really like the vibe of the game, the artwork, the music you guys are using.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just really old school, and it's hard to describe it, but
yeah, the team that I've been lucky enough to bring to this group. I mean, usually when you're interviewing people for a job, you're offering them a salary, and I'm not. So just people who've been really passionate. And, so it's been amazing for me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Sounds good.
And that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the interview. I think that's actually only the second interview I've ever done on this channel, but I did enjoy it, and I will consider doing some more in the future if you guys seem to like that type of content. I'll leave a link down below to the Wayward Realms Kickstarter. It's not launched yet, but you can sign up to be notified when it does. And actually, I just noticed that it is launching on May 30th. But as always, I'm not here to tell you where or where not to put your money. Make sure to do your own research. This game could turn out to be a really cool game, and I really hope it does, of course, but it could also fail miserably and not really make it anywhere at all. That's not something that I can know at this point, but I am interested in the game, and I will definitely be keeping an eye on this one as it develops. I'll catch you all on the next one. Cheers.